If you're thinking of buying or selling a home in Guelph this year, January numbers matter more than you think. In this video, I'm breaking down the January 2026 market right across Wellington County and then zooming into Guelph specifically so you can see where things are holding, things are moving, and perhaps even stagnating. And most importantly, what this means for you if you're making a move. Before we dive in, I want to let you know that this video is part of a collaborative video series with real estate professionals right across North America. We're talking other provinces here in Canada, as well as select cities in the United States. We're all specialists in our own markets, and the goal of this collaboration is simple: to educate with clarity and no hype. So if you're curious about some of the other markets here in Canada or perhaps the US, make sure you go check out the links in the description below. All right, let's bring it back home. So just to be clear, Guelph sits with Wellington County at large, but because of its commuter-friendly nature and where it sits right in the 401, also it sits independently from the rest of the county itself, it gets coupled into GTA dynamics quite easily, and for good reason. For the sake of today's video and numbers, I'm going to be trying something new. I'm going to be sharing live stat numbers that were just released when it comes to the market. So we're going to go from this full screen into a split screen or a screen share here. Let's get into the numbers. So I'm looking at Wellington County as a whole. Now, Guelph sits in Wellington County. It is independent of it, however, it sits within it, and so it gets coupled in. But it's important that you remember that Guelph as part of that greater Golden Horseshoe catchment. It does behave a little bit to GTA dynamics, and we're going to go into that as well when we zoom in. But for now, looking at Wellington County, the number that I'm really curious about here is, of course, our average sale price. So from year to date, if we're looking at last year to this year, there's been a reduction of 8.7%. It's not as startling because you saw December's numbers, and that really gave us a good idea of what the market's been doing. Now, median sale price, a number that you're probably going to want to pay more attention to, because if you know the difference between average and median, you realize that our median sale price is right at the midpoint versus average is somewhat skewed when it comes to some luxury listings or some really lower listings, and so those numbers are a little bit skewed by those outlier properties. But our median gives us a really good tracking of what that market's doing. So our median sales price actually went down 10%, and we're sitting at $727,000. Now this is again for all of Wellington County. Of course, the sale price number is important to you because you want to know what your property is going to sell for. The numbers that I think most sellers are curious of, or at least homeowners are, is, hey, how much is the average sale price, which the average cannot tell you that, and how long is it going to take? So looking at how long is it going to take, our average days on market, it is not surprising that the average days on market has actually gone up. Given what 2025 held in most markets, this is very telling of how January has started. So our average days have actually gone up 23%. It is sitting at 58 days on average to offload a product, as opposed to 47 days the year prior. Now, just moving across here, if you're looking at just last month to this month, it's actually gone up 9% as well. Another number that you're most curious of are the amount of new listings to hit our markets. So in January 2026, Wellington County as a whole saw 441. The previous month, December, which we know cyclically is a funny market, saw 194. If we move across and look at the difference between Jan 2026 to Jan 2025, you're going to see that last year actually saw an increased amount of listings hit the market in January at 461 versus today we're looking at 441 new listings in Wellington County. Another number that I look at is our sale to list price ratio, with some caution, simply because it matters what market we're in when we're considering that number. Are we in a market where a lot of listings are listed lower and then it sells for much higher? Or are we in a market where things are hitting the market at market value, right? So we're sitting at 97.3% today in terms of our sales to list price ratio, and that's a strong market. That's a beautifully balanced market, and one that buyers can make informed and confident decisions in. They're not rushed. There's no urgency here. So I've talked a lot about Wellington County here. If I use this drop down here, you're going to see just how vast Wellington County is. Okay, so we're talking center of Wellington, Erin, Guelph, Hermosa, Mapleton, Minto. So Rockwood, all of that falls, Fergus, all of that falls into our Wellington County at large. So I'm going to zoom in to Guelph specifically because I know a lot of you are curious about Guelph. If you're curious about the GTA and the Halton market, which are again markets that I work in heavily, that will be covered in another video. I wanted to keep this one really separate, but there will be another video with Oakville and GTA because those are the markets I'm playing in right now with clients. I say playing because shopping is an experience. Okay, moving right back into our stats here. Looking at Guelph specifically, and maybe we'll break down housing types here as well, but I want to give you an overall picture first. In terms of our year-to-date average sales price, it actually went down 4% versus Wellington County when we saw that 8% drop. And remember, we saw the median price drop 10%. It's different here in Guelph. So for Guelph, the city of Guelph specifically, we're looking at a reduction of almost 5% in our average sales price and a reduction of almost 8% in our median sales price, which is sitting at $725,000. Now, moving on to the number of new listings, because I have definitely seen a flow and influx of listings that have come to market, but also keep in mind that some of these may not be captured here entirely, actually. Some of them are relists, some of them are expired, some of them are cancellations, and then they hit the market, right? Like this isn't always telling. It can be a little bit skewed of the market, of the listings hitting the market. But nevertheless, for January 2026, we did see 254 new listings hit the market versus December, which was at 110. Good old December. So yeah, that's an increase of 130%, but this is expected cyclically. This is what happens. I'd be very curious to see what that number tells us in March, because a lot of sellers are conditioned to thinking that spring market happens in March and not before. But I can tell you year after year, our spring market has been happening a little bit earlier. And even if it's not the traditional hustle and bustle of the spring market, it is a little bit of people understanding, sellers or homeowners understanding that there might be a benefit to listing at a time where there isn't a ton of competition and you're not compared to a host of properties on your street or neighborhood or area at large. Especially if you have a unique home that you're trying to offload, you might want to strategically plan around a very heavy listing market at that point. Let's move on to these stats here, please. We're looking at the median sale price. It has come down about 8%. We're looking at $725,000. Let's move on to the average days on market. We saw that for Wellington County at large, the average days on market are sitting at 58. The average days on market here for the city of Guelph for the month of January is sitting at 45. And let me tell you a little story. I happened to show a home in January in Guelph, and it was in the South End. And actually, I showed a bunch of homes in the South End, but this one specifically was priced above what anyone in the vicinity had sold in the recent 60 to 90 day window. You're looking at comps in the 60 to 90 day window because you're trying to make sense of that price. And I'm not sure, but I have seen this trend in some of these South End properties where people are pricing properties so much higher than what the average seems to be selling for. And I don't know if this is some sort of tactic to try and test the market, but it is a downright turnoff for buyers. Buyers do not care for your aspirational prices. I say this with love. I say this with respect. I say this with understanding that maybe you purchased this property for a lot more at the time. And perhaps there are life needs that say, hey, I need to make this amount in order to cut ties and move on the rest of my life. However, if you are offloading a property and you have this aspirational price point that doesn't make sense in today's market, you are leaving yourself as an open target if you're listing at that price and you're not moving. And it might cause a little bit of stigma, and then to take it off and to relist or reduce the price and try again at a different point, you're setting a story, a tone in the buyer's mind. You might want to try a different strategy. The average days on market here is sitting at 45, which is pretty average today. Actually, it did go up when compared to last year. January was sitting at 40 days, so it is an increase of 14%. I want to show you something because we have the gift of this screen share today. I just want to give you a different neighborhood to look at. Okay, so this is City of Guelph at large. So remember that our median sale price for the City of Guelph at large is sitting at $725,000. Let's pick Courtright Hills. Okay, here we go. Let's pick Courtright Hills. So it's a South End neighborhood. I really want to show you something here. While the median sale price of Guelph showed at $725,000, the median sale price for Courtright Hills is sitting at almost 1.15. Okay, so this is what I mean when I say you really need to shop the neighborhood and look at data in the neighborhood. And this has actually gone up when compared to last year. I can tell you from shopping these South End neighborhoods, there are buyers. There are serious buyers all looking at properties, all swirling around, trying to capture a property in a good school district. Very much a real thing here. And so this is where you see, and a lot of this neighborhood are fully detached homes. Of course, there's a little bit of a mix of a townhome and a condo town. Most of them are detached, and that's where you see this pricing change, as opposed to the bigger scope of all of the city of Guelph. All right, moving on, I'm actually going to remove this filter and just go right back to the city of Guelph. Okay, so all of Guelph, we're going to look at all of Guelph, and we're going to look specifically what has been happening in our condo apartments, not to be confused with condo townhomes. So overall, our condo market has seen a reduction. This is a true buyer's market in our condo segment, and we've seen a reduction of 3% when compared to last year, and the average sales price is sitting at $476,000, while the median sale price is sitting at $489,000. Okay, we've had 14 sales for the month of January, which actually has gone up because it was 12 this time last year. Our average days on market for condos sitting at 64. One-bedroom condos are a tough product to offload in this market. And if there are investors that are sitting with this property type and they're looking to capture a price that they purchased for when money was just being handed out, this is going to be a tough product to offload given today's economic dynamics. So I tell you that because I had 2 listings last year in the condo sector, both one bedrooms, both did not sell because of that. And one of them was tenanted, so that comes with its own host of intricacies. So moving from condo apartment, I want to go to our semi-detached. Now in terms of semis, Guelph doesn't have this large, we do have some semi, but it's not quite as large as one would think. You like transaction volume? Look at that, we have 1 for January 2026. Prior year there was 2. Right? We don't have a ton of semis, and the ones that we do have that come up, they definitely see some interest. And unfortunately, I don't think that this is enough data for me to even share much more here. I do want to go into our townhomes here, our attached townhomes. Here we go. So not in the condo, but our freehold townhomes, because this property type definitely sees traction because it falls into that first-time homebuyer pool, which I know for a lot of people in the Greater Toronto area, your first-time homebuyer budget is sitting at $1 million, and I get the pain of that. However, if you're willing to drive a little bit further on that 401, you will find that there are pockets where you can get into a freehold property. Yes, this is a town. However, there are freeholds that can fall under $1 million, even here in the city of Guelph. But looking at our freeholds, the average price for a freehold townhome is $745,000. That's gone down 6%. And the median sale price is sitting at $740,000. Now, the average days on market for this product is sitting at 64. That's actually gone up because people have so much choice now by buyers when there's an influx of inventory and there's more choice on the market. People have more time to make decisions. And you know what ends up happening inadvertently is that you get stuck as a buyer when there's so much to choose from. I don't know about you, but when I go to a buffet, I can literally never decide what to eat. And then I take a little bit and I'm always disappointed that I didn't make the most of it. And I think that's what's happening with some of our buyers. It's just every time they see a product or a property that they like, it's not understanding that you will not get 100% of everything you want in a property. And then it's thinking, oh, if this property is this good and it gets me there, 70% of my deal breaker list is here in this property, I'm just going to wait a little bit and see what else I can get. It is that indecision, it is that stagnancy that is adding to this average days on market. I'm very curious to see what this does next month because we did have a Bank of Canada hold in January in terms of the interest rate. And whenever there's an interest rate hold, I am noticing this pattern where we're seeing more traction in the market. And I think that's because when it's held, people are somehow equating that to stability or confidence and saying, okay, I'm ready to go, because every time the Bank of Canada reduces that key interest rate, the transaction volume actually stays or it goes down. So it's a funny dynamic. It's a funny stat. I have to probably look into it before I spout out these gospel truths. But moving on to our median days on market, we're looking at 22 days. For a freehold townhome that's in good shape, that has some upgrades, that's perhaps even in the south end of Guelph, that's $740,000, especially if it has a finished basement and things like that. I don't believe that's accurate. It's higher than that, and I've seen it. Moving on to our detached segment here for the city of Guelph. See how when we zoom into specific property types, and not just all property types, it changes. So our median sale price for the city of Guelph for a detached property is sitting at $835,000 versus the average is sitting at $873,000. They're fairly close. It could be an outlier property that's sold. And the transaction volume here has actually gone down 30% from this time last year. It's sitting at 39 this year versus 56 last year, and that is a reduction of 30%. Has buyer confidence stalled? I'm very curious to see what Feb does, because I have seen an increase in transaction volume in January 2026. Truly. So looking at our average days on market for detached properties, which is our highly coveted properties here in Guelph, we're looking at 36 days for the month of January. And looking at our sales to list price ratio, we're sitting at that beautiful 97 to 98%, which is a beautifully balanced market for our detached segment. So what do you do with these numbers exactly? As buyers, this market gives you room to think. Use it. You don't need to rush, but you do need to be prepared when the right home shows up. I can tell you from personal experience, having shown clients in January a property that I said, hey, look, I think this is going to go by the weekend. And sure enough, in multiple offers, it went, simply because of the positioning of that property. So good. It's so good. When price, upkeep of the home itself, and your marketing efforts all come together, it's a beautiful thing on the MLS. And you as buyers really benefit from such well-positioned properties. If you're selling and buying in the same market, even if you're downsizing, offloading something and downsizing in this market, your planning truly matters here. More than timing, there is no perfect time. This is about positioning yourselves well on both sides, whether it's offloading and then purchasing, or purchasing and then offloading. So our key January 2026 takeaway is this: Wellington County is ready, Guelph is steady. Oh my God, I am not a poet. And this market is rewarding clarity. There is no urgency. So if you're trying to figure out how this translates to your own life, to your circumstance, or coming up with a plan can be too daunting, or maybe some of the minutia and the legal work, the legal paperwork that's involved, you just need someone, a sounding board. This is the kind of conversation I have daily with clients who are looking to navigate the market. You'll see the link below. I have 3 clarity calls that are available. Please go ahead and schedule a call, and I look forward to chatting with you. Stay tuned for the next video. We're going to go into the GTA market as well as Oakville, because that's where I happen to be shopping with clients right now. And Oakville has seen some serious change with numbers, and I'm eager to share them with you.